dictionary definition, I'm sure you've seen it before. You know, person who organizes, operates a business or enterprise and takes the risk to do so. An entrepreneur's got to be comfortable with leading, with being in charge, but also with the risk that's there. And I guess that's something that I've always been comfortable with. But obviously, one of the world's most famous entrepreneurs, it's not just about risk and leadership, it's about passion. You've really got to have a passion to believe in what you want to do and convince people that that's something that they should believe in as well. So for me, you know, leaving university, I really thought, yeah, I want to get into something that I have a passion for. But it didn't quite work out that way to start with. I ended up going into accountancy. I'm afraid it only lasted there for a year. I was destined to be the 4th generation of Simmers accountants. So when you're in your 20s and things aren't going too well, you go home to see your dad. You know, sorry dad, this is not going to work out. There was a pause in conversation. I think we had both had the same thought at the same time, because he said, I hope you're not just thinking you're going to do a ski season in the Alps. Right, bollocks, that's plan A out the window. So what's plan B? Well, one of my great passions at that stage was sport. And luckily within sort of 3-4 months, I landed a job with IMG, Mark McCormick's organization, one of the biggest sports marketing companies in the world. And yeah, big business, but where I ended up was with a very small, entrepreneurially focused department that looked after golf events globally. And going back to that to definition, you know, we organized and operated major golf tournaments and took on the risk to do so. Back to that definition again. And I think there was a great lesson for me just starting out, you know, I guess having that passion to be an entrepreneur was all about a solution-driven environment. When you run a big event, big golf tournament, I always equate it to like building a house. You've got lots of different contractors coming at different times, but your deadline's absolute. A whole bunch of very famous golfers are turning up on Monday of the tournament week, and come hell or high water, it's got to be ready. So it was really much about solutions, not problems, and about building a team around the tournament that really worked. And that, you know, I learned really well. And the second side was networking. You know, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you've got to get comfortable with networking. I think a great example of that, I was thinking back, was at this tournament, the Johnny Walker Classic. I was the operations guy out in the Philippines, in Manila, and absolute nightmare trying to get stuff in through customs. Told everyone, all our suppliers, to make sure they got stuff in early, but unfortunately the head of our sponsor, Johnny Walker, wasn't listening. And he sent his stuff late. So 2 days before the tournament, 2 large 40-foot containers with all the sponsor goodies, all the giveaways for the special guests are sitting in customs. My customs freight forward guy's going mad. He just comes back to you and says, no chance, you're never going to get it. And the night before, I'd been at a meeting with our volunteers doing a briefing, and met this guy, came up very nondescript, handed me his card, said, hi, my name's Roy. You know, I'm quite well connected. You know, you give that sort of, yeah, very nice to meet you, thanks very much, you know, card in pocket. But next morning, I thought, do you know what, I'll give this guy a call. So I phoned him up, explained the situation. He said, it's funny you should call. I'm actually playing golf with the president at the moment. I'll have a word with him and I'll give you a call back. Well, we had our containers 6 hours later. So, you know, I'm doing a lot of talking now, but 2 ears, 1 mouth. It's good to listen. But it was a great time at IMG, but I still had this burning ambition, this passion to go and do my own thing. So in 2001, I set up my own events and promotions business in Glasgow. We had a good run. We had some great clients, some great projects that we ran in that space. But ultimately, it was a struggle. We had a good backer. But yeah, what were the lessons I learned in that it not working? I guess my first dabble in running my own business. First of all, don't call a business after your own name. Because if your name's above the door, you're the person that they want to see. And it's difficult to build a team around you. But did I do a real proper look at the market size? No, I didn't. You know, the events market in Scotland's small, it's very competitive. It didn't work out. We had a trade investor. So we got a lot of business from them, but they actually owned our business as well. And so we ended up basically jumping to their tune rather than our own tune. And that was, I guess, a mistake. It was a nice thing to have at the beginning, but it didn't work. And so that, you know, ultimately didn't work. And in 2007, I shut the business down, having probably put quite a lot of personal money into it. and it was time to do something else. And when you shut your business down, you're like, oh, I better find a job. So back to that skiing thing again, I ended up as chief executive of a national governing body, Snowsport GB. A great sport, some great athletes in there, but ultimately didn't work. Brought in lots of new sponsorship. We refocused the organization to sort of really work with the athletes. But another great learning for me is do your due diligence before you go in. Did I really look at the organization and work out what it is I was going to? No, I didn't. Skeletons in the cupboard, massive political fighting, big financial problems that I wasn't really aware of. The board was pretty dysfunctional. There was no strategic vision. So it's a pretty lonely space as a chief exec. And probably down to me, my mistake, look after the cash. I'm sure in the business school that's reiterated again and again. Well, I learned to my cost, and a very public dismissal in 2009. So back to our friend, Mr. Jobs. Failure sucks, but it's almost necessary if you want to succeed. So you have to get over it and get on with the things that really matter. But getting over it in Scotland, as opposed to America, is quite tough. If things don't work out, there's a bit of a stigma attached to that, and that's quite hard to move on to the next thing. So what was the solution for me? I'm very fortunate. I went on the Saltire Foundation Fellowship Programme, which was developed by the Scottish Government to develop a new generation of entrepreneurial leaders. I'm sure many of you will have heard of it, but it's a great programme. And I was very lucky to go out to Babson College in Boston, ranked #1 in entrepreneurial MBAs for the past 18 years, and just a great place. Very sort of interactive learning from professors and lecturers who have all been successful or are currently successful business people in their own right. So it was a great opportunity. And what did I want from that? I wanted my confidence back after a couple of failures. You're taking a bit of a kicking. Wanted my mojo back. I wanted to go from what I saw, the sports business is a wants business. People want to go to sports events. People want to go to want to see stars, but they don't need to. And I really wanted to move to a needs sector, and then to widen my network, but also to get a toolkit for business. And at Babson, whilst there's some great learnings around leadership and passion and looking at business opportunities, they actually think there's a model for entrepreneurship. And some of you may have looked at this before, but I think this really underpins my thinking now as an entrepreneur and what I've taken into Celtic Renewables as a new venture. And it's based on three premises, really. The opportunity. What is it you're trying to take forward? What's the pain you're trying to solve? And how big is that pain? I.e., what's the opportunity, how big is the market? And can your solution really address it? The team is crucial. We met lots of investment people in Boston who said ultimately the team is more important than the opportunity. We'll always back a good team. And that's domain expertise, market knowledge, and track record. And finding the resources, and I use that word rather than money, because I think, as Tanya talked about, it's about, what can you get away with doing? How can you make your idea come to life, without having to attract huge amount of money? And at Babson, they talk about balance. All those three have to be in balance, because if one's too big, then the model tips over. And I think, that's, for me, looking back at my own company at Simmers Enterprises and looking at Snowsport GB, I can just see gaping great holes in this model, and no wonder they didn't work, because there were things missing, and it certainly wasn't in balance. So fast forward to today, as I say, the Saltire Foundation was a great program. In the last 12 weeks of that, I'd given the chance to go to Edinburgh Napier to work with Professor Martin Tangney at the Biofuel Research Centre, and to really help him look at the commercial potential for the successful research they'd done at Edinburgh Napier. And I guess going back to my due diligence bit, it was just kind of a 12-week try before you buy for both of us. We both got a chance to check each other out, see whether we could work together. And as it transpires, we can. So what are we up to? We are converting the byproducts of whiskey production. So when you make whiskey, you have the spent grains, which is the middle bottle there. And that's the barley that's been mashed up, and you've taken out the simple sugar, the glucose. And then we mix it with the pot ale, and that's the liquid residue that's left in those lovely copper stills, for those of you who've been to the distillery. When you make whiskey, you make a beer, effectively about 8% alcohol. You then distill off that 8% and you're left with 92%. So for every litre of alcohol you make for whiskey, you've got 8 times the amount of pot ale, which is a copper contaminated, high biological oxygen demand effluent. Now the whiskey industry are lucky that it's not called waste, but frankly it is. So what's the pain point? The whiskey industry have a disposal issue with these 2 byproducts. The second bit is that we convert that through fermentation into high value renewable chemicals, one of which is biobutanol, and that's a direct replacement for petrol. So you can take biobutanol and you can put that directly into your car. There's a gentleman in America, David Ramey, who's driven his car thousands of miles across the US purely on butanol. So second pain point, we're mandated by Europe to have 10% biofuel in the fuel supply chain by 2020. So those are the 2 pain points. We've got a patented process technology based on a 100-year-old process that's been industrially around the world for many years. Is the market big? If we took all the byproducts from Scotch whisky, we would have a market of about 100 million turnover per annum. But there's whisky all over the world. So is it a good opportunity? We think it is. And the team we've put together, Professor Tiny in the middle, world expert on biobutanol and the process we're using. So yeah, big domain expertise. Back left, the grey hair, Doug Ward, CBE, who's our chairman, founder of Argent Energy, a biodiesel company based here in Scotland who convert animal fat and use cooking oil into biodiesel. And I guess myself with, fairly long business entrepreneurial record. And we met our investor, and he said, yeah, you're a good team. You've got knowledge, Martin, wisdom, Doug, and I guess me, I'm the action, but a reasonably potent force. And then resources, we've been very fortunate thus far. We've raised about £600,000 to undertake the early part of the business. But not only that, we've got great political support, great support from Scottish Enterprise, and we've developed a great profile in the media. So, our stock is pretty high at the moment. And we believe that's really in balance. So what are we doing at the moment? Well, this, I guess, was the scale that it started off at Napier with the research. And we're now upscaling the fermentation technology using the Centre for Process Innovation, where we can take that to pre-commercial phase. We're building our process blueprint. So, what's our cradle to grave look like in terms of our process, so we can work out our capital and our operating costs, were we to take this to the next stage. And then really the final bit of that is crucial to us is upstream. We know we can sell our products at the downstream end, but we need feedstock from the whiskey companies and we need the finance to build it. But our vision is first production plant by 2014. Looking something like this. This is actually Argent Energy's plant, but ours is going to look very similar to that. This plant cost about 30 million, so it's a pretty big ask for us in terms of raising money. And our vision is to develop a new biobutanol industry in Scotland and for Scotland. Our technology will work really with any spirits or drinks business. It works with any organic matter that has sugar in it. So the potential, as I say, is pretty big. And the second and final comment, I think, comes from another great entrepreneur, and probably the first to achieve scale in his field, Henry Ford, in the automobile industry. This is the Model T, and interestingly, it ran on bioethanol, produced in farms all around the US. Sadly, that was killed off by prohibition in the 20s. But he said, there's fuel in every bit of vegetable matter that can be fermented, and that was in 1925, and that rings true now. So thank you very much, and look forward to some questions at the end.